This coop has been an ongoing project for close to 3 years. The work kind of stalled out for quite a while, but I'll talk more about that later. We needed a new coop because the old one had been leaking for quite a long time. The roof had been tarped more than once, and the floors were sagging and bending under your feet. The old coop was just too big. It was designed to have 20 to 30 chickens on one side and 15 to 20 turkeys on the other side, and we're only planning on keeping about 30 hens. This location was chosen because there's already a long fence down one side, and an old gate from when there was a duck pen here. The fence down the side has hops growing on it, and it provides good shade for the chickens in the summer, and it reduces the amount of work required to put up the fence. I started this back in August of 2017, and things went well at the start. The coop is 12 feet across the front and 10 feet down the sides. I set up some concrete blocks in the corners and some extras in the middle of the longer span for extra support. The ground here was nowhere near level, so there was a lot of digging to set the blocks and get them level. I built up a frame of 2x6s and added floor joists. I put this all on top of some 2x4s, placed in the front and the back, so the joists actually sit on the 2x4. That just made it easier to put it all together. With the floor joists all in place and complete, then I started sheeting it with 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood. Once it was all sheeted, I built the side and the back walls, because the front was going to be a little more complex. The sides are 8 feet at one end and 7 foot at the other, and I believe that ends up being a 6-degree slope. On the front, I wanted to add nesting boxes with easy access from the outside, so I framed out the entrance for each box. I also installed the door that we bought from Habitat for Humanity. We got a good price on a pretty solid door. This would be the people entrance, where we'll keep bins for feed, and also have access to clean the inner coop. With everything framed out, I started to add some OSB panels on the outside. And I decided now might be a good time to put some panels on the roof as well, and provide myself with a little shade. Then I continued adding boards around the outside. Now seemed like a good time to go up on the hot roof and add some shingles. These were rollout shingles that we already had on hand. A roll's about 3 feet wide, and you just roll them out starting at the bottom of the roof and work your way up to the front. Sometimes you find that the thing you have on hand and is free is not the right thing for the job. This was the case for the shingles, but more on this later. I cut out a window in the front and back of the coop to try to get a nice cooling cross breeze through there in the summer, and to keep the dust from settling in the coop as much as I could. I'm sure the windows do help with the dust, but it doesn't stop it. Chickens just make so much dust. I also added an inner wall and door covered in chicken wire to keep the chickens away from the food storage. This just separates the people section from the chicken section. Then I added a door for them along the back so they can get out into their chicken run. I set up a string pulley system to open the chicken's door from within the people area. This again was put together with items that we have laying around the barn. With most of the coop closed in, I started on the nesting boxes. I used 2x2s to build a frame, and I was shooting for boxes that were 1 foot by 1 foot, because chickens like a small dark space to lay their eggs. So far, this is turning out to be a lot of work for those eggs, but I think it's worth it. Plus, I have fun building this stuff. This is the point where things didn't go quite as planned. I wanted to make siding from pallets. I thought it would be a good, cheap, or free source of wood to use for siding. And it was almost free, other than the cost of the gas to go get the pallets. And even those I would usually do on my way home from work. I ended up spending a lot of time and effort tearing apart as many pallets as I could get. I took time to run them over the dado blade so I can get an overlap to allow water to run down and not penetrate into the OSB underneath. This was proving to be a lot of work though, and finding enough pallets for the entire coop was going to be very difficult. I was thankful for my helper though, who was working on removing a stump. On top of the other issues, the pallet boards were quickly showing damage from the sun. I did intend to paint the coop, but before I could even finish putting up the siding, some of the boards were already starting to warp and twist. I was also starting to see a lot of paper wasps getting under the boards. The old coop had a huge problem with paper wasps, and I could see the new coop would end up being a new home for these wasps. Other parts of the build were still going well, like adding a small awning over the back door and stairs. For now, the stairs are just propped up so that I can dig the trench around the coop. I'm adding chicken wire around the coop itself that's buried underground so that nothing can get under the coop. We don't want chickens nesting under there or we'll never get any eggs. And we don't want rats living under there, gnawing their way up into the coop. And of course, we don't want any predators getting under there either. This trench extends from the side of the coop all the way down about 36 feet and then jogs 20 feet over to meet the existing fence. It's a nice big run at 720 square feet. I rented a Bobcat mini excavator for the trench and a few other jobs around the property, including digging out the dirt floor inside the barn to prep for adding concrete. I plan to do a video about the work we are doing renovating the barn from an old horse barn into a useful shop, craft, and storage space. Click the notification bell if you want to be notified when the video comes out. The barn is a very exciting place for us. There's so much potential in that space. All of the chicken wire for the fence is buried about 6 inches down below grade and then travels out nearly a foot from the fence. This part's been set up for 3 years now and no predator has ever gotten into the chicken run. So now we have a mostly fully functioning coop. The chickens are in their new home and the work on the siding has utterly stalled out. We tore down the old coop and reused the lumber from that to make a greenhouse. I'll also be doing a video on that fairly soon. So if you're interested, please feel free to subscribe and click that like button if you're getting any value out of this video. Not long after most of the construction was done, we went away for a couple of weeks, and the wind ended up blowing up some of the shingles from the side, and the coop got soaked inside. So, when we returned home from our vacation in the middle of January, I had to staple on an emergency tarp, and then wait for some nicer weather before I could replace the roof. I won't place all the blame on the shingles though. It may have been a little bit my fault for not knowing how to install them properly. I once again went back to Habitat for Humanity and found some better roofing shingles. These were a lot more work to install, but they're worth it. This time the roof held up fine and has been leak-free since then. Finally though, this year we decided to do something about the siding on the coop. We had more free time at home due to the lockdown, so it was a good time to do something about the looks of this coop. In June, I found some outdoor wood paneling at a local lumber yard, and the cost to cover the coop should be around $300, so we can accept that. It's more than I wanted to spend on siding the coop, but that was before the pallet idea failed so miserably. For the outer trim, I was going to use some lumber that I have from the demolition of the horse stalls in the barn. I cut a bunch of strips to make the trim, and then set up a sanding and painting station out front of the barn. I used some of the black paint that we bought when the barn was originally painted. It used to be this yellowish color, and then it was painted a few years ago. I think the barn looks much better now. I started the siding on the side of the coop that faces our house, and the same side that had all the old pallet wood on it. As I was tearing that down, I discovered there were indeed a lot of wasps hiding in the siding, but not as many as the old coop. This new siding will lay flat against the OSB, so the wasps won't find many small spaces to make their nests. The trim doesn't leave much space for wasps either, so my daughter will be very happy to see fewer wasps around the coop. She really hates wasps. To make adding the siding easier, I attached a 2x2 along the bottom of the wall that I could rest the sheet on while I tack it in place with a nail. Then I can step back, make sure it looks right, and then properly attach it with staples. I started to do the siding on the opposite side next, and a warning to anyone filming their projects: let your wife know where you place the camera, or it may end up getting watered with the vegetables.
Oh shoot, sorry. I just hosed the GoPro.
Once that side was done, I moved around to the back and removed the awning. It was installed to try to keep down the mud that the chickens will bring into the coop. The hope was keeping the entrance area dry would reduce the mud, but I didn't find that it made much difference. I may put something like that back later, but only for looks. I also removed the back shutters, then cut out a space for the back window and one for the chicken door. On the front, there were still little bits of the old siding to remove. There's also a motion light, the shutters, and the lid to the nesting box. The shutters and the lid are both going to be rebuilt. I started the siding on the front by cutting out a spot for a door. And by this point, I'm starting to run low on siding, and I hope to be able to get the job done with what I already have. The front has fewer full sheets needed, so I was able to get the job done, including all the bits on the nesting box. Getting near the end of the day, I had to add a temporary lid to the nesting box. This is not hinged or anything, it's directly screwed to the frame. I just need to have it closed for the night. The next day I removed the temporary lid and added some cut-off siding scraps as backing above the nesting box. This is a space for a thicker trim board that I can attach the hinges to. But without the scraps as backing, it won't sit flush. Now it's finally time to put on all the trim, and I think it's starting to look pretty good. That trim will really be the final touch that'll bring it all together. To make the shutters, I bought some wainscoting, cut them to height using the chop saw. The last board for each shutter had to be trimmed to width on the table saw. Then I ripped some 2x4s into strips with the table saw, and then used a sandwich of those to keep all the wainscoting boards together, and ended up with something like this. I did a quick test fit on the coop, and everything seemed to fit just fine. Once all 4 shutters were done, I looked in our pile of paint cans and settled on a blue outdoor stain. This was bought a while ago as a paint store reject. We've used it on some of our beehives. I painted all 4 shutters, attached the hinges that I recovered from the old shutters, and then I also sanded and repainted the door in that same blue stain. Once all the paint was dry, I took everything out to the coop and put it all together. At this point, there's only a couple of touch-ups on some of the trim that was cut after it was painted. Other than that, the outer part of the coop is done, and I'm really happy with how it looks. This is so much better than how it's been for the past couple of years. I do still have a couple of changes that I want to make inside, but that's a future video. For now, I'm going to call the coop done. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see what we have coming in the future.